In the meeting procedure, we have to have the confirmation of the agenda. Biden and Hallahan. All in favor? Carried? Yes. Disclosure of pecuniary interest, if any. None noted. Okay. This is a public meeting, and that different from a lot of meetings that only counselors speak, that we are going to relax that and have a number of ones besides the council speak, and so that it's we'll move into 4.1, which is on the agenda, which is the Richard W. Levan Airport and discussion on it. Pat, do you want to lead off a little bit, or?
Well, if we wanted to go to 4.1.2, I could give a bit of background.
That would be great.
Okay. So as written in the agenda, I provided a little feedback and background, so we all know how we got to this room and to this meeting today. We had submitted to council a feasibility study for the airport, and after the presentations and deliberations at council, they have selected to proceed with option A, which was part of that feasibility study, and to continue to operate the Richard Levan Airport with no significant operational changes. And they passed a motion to that effect, and they also requested in that motion that a meeting be held with representatives of North Huron and Morris Turnbury councils and the airport committee users. So we've invited a number of guests to the meeting, and of course it's a public meeting of which anyone can attend. So if you were to go back to 4.1.1 on the agenda, we have the members of the airport committee. We have North Huron Council here. We have some staff from North Huron. We've also invited Warden Paul Gowing from Huron County, and Natasha Fritzley from Huron County Economic just called today to let us know that she's ill, but she has passed her information on to Sharon to share. So that is how we all ended up here today. I'm not sure if you want me to go into any more detail, Reeve, Vincent, but that's sort of the background as to why we're here today. And then each of the agenda items I've pulled from the proposed option of the Richard Levan Airport. And of course, if there's anything else that you can add that onto the discussions.
Okay.
Would you like to move forward with the agenda items then? With,
I was just going to suggest that perhaps as part of the introductions, we could go around the table, and there's some people here who are representatives of the airport committee and such. So I'm not sure if everybody knows all of the councillors, so I think that it might be handy to do that.
That's good.
Okay, I guess we'll go around this way, starting out Neil Vincent, Reeve of North Huron, and council rep to the airport committee.
Sharon Chambers, CAO North Huron.
Yolanda Ritz-Fatiniga, North Huron Councillor, Wayland Ward.
Trevor Slate, Councillor, Wayland Ward.
Brock Vodden, Blythe Ward.
John Smuck, Morris Turnbury, and delegate from Morris Turnbury on the airport committee.
Paul Gowing, Mayor of Morris Turnbury, and currently serving as the Warden of Huron County.
That's impressive.
Good job.
Yeah, big job. Henry Van Hees, Airport Committee.
Rod Higgy, nobody.
No.
Don Thompson, airport committee.
Blair Hawkins on the airport committee.
And everyone knows my name, but I'm also responsible for oversight of the airport as part of my role.
Bill Nutt, Blythe Ward.
Ray Hallahan, East Wanatch Ward.
Jim Campbell, East Wanatch Ward, Deputy Reeve.
Richard Al, I'm Manager of Employee and Business Services for North Huron.
Can I get?
Start with 4.2. 1.3.1. So there is a report that Natasha kindly forwarded to me today. She does apologize for not being able to attend this evening. I think she's been suffering from pneumonia and was not able to attend. So if you'll just bear with me, I'm gonna pull up my email and the report that Natasha forwarded to me. So her comments are that the Huron Economic Development Work Plan has committed the county to work with municipalities to conduct an asset analysis and feasibility study on municipally owned airports. Prior to executing this, the county needs to hire an economic development officer to assist with facilitation of the study. The county is currently in the first phase of interviewing economic development candidates and will be commencing a second round of interviews over the next 3 weeks. Upon the hiring of the economic development officer, the county anticipates working to ensure all municipalities are introduced to the successful candidate. At that point, we will look for feedback on when and how to engage the appropriate stakeholders in the asset analysis and feasibility study related to municipally owned airports. So that is the status of where it falls in the county strategic plan.
Paul, do you have anything you would like to add to that?
Well, yes, this is a very timely conversation to have. We're maybe just one step ahead of where we can get to at the county level. We're in the process of, getting the new economic development board's feet on the ground and the action type items and, putting staff in place right now. So, this is a great conversation to be having, very timely. We're just a little bit ahead of what, for us to handle it at the county and, have the economic development board have a real good look at, what the board should be attempting to do in regards to, the airports that are municipally owned in the county of Huron.
Trevor?
So, Paul, just says, what is do we know a timeline between hiring and the introduction of this proposal? Like are we looking at an 8-month window? Like, I don't know what, that was pretty vague what Natasha said of when a hire is and get to know the actual municipal stakeholders. So I'm just kind of, in my eye, I'm just looking for an idea of what that timeline from a county perspective is looking like.
And it's tough for me to put a definite timeline on. I'm thinking in that 6 months. You know how things move in our world,
Yes,
Trevor, and we want it to happen now or yesterday, but it will take a little bit of time. I've taken things forward, kept an eye on, and through our municipal rep John Smuck here, information that's come to us at Morris Turnberry to myself, and I've taken that forward to the board and got it, them aware of what's going on and that information, to them, but we're just not at a stage, that we're ready to deal with it.
no, and I think from my perspective, mine always got gauge as an estimate, and the reason why, as I said, if you told me 7 months, I'm not gonna keep asking the question 3 weeks from today. But in 6 months or 7 months, the questions might start arising again to see where we're on the queue. I guess it's just a matter of making sure it doesn't fall off the radar or continue on a process of not knowing. So.
Sure.
So through you, Reeve. I have been having some conversations with Natasha regarding the hire of the new economic development officer, just in relation to the services that they can provide to the lower tiers. And they are very close to finalizing that hiring process from what I understand. And they are planning meetings with the lower tier municipalities in the near future to discuss how this new economic development officer can provide service to the lower tiers. So I would anticipate, getting this new individual into the seat and, starting to work out the work plan, getting to know the lower tier municipalities and understanding from each lower tier municipality what the needs are. I would expect there would be a few month window as the warden is stating, to be able to really start digging in and moving the projects forward.
Councillor Vaughan.
So another way of posing this question, perhaps to Trevor, is I'm assuming that there is no sort of initial plan. There's no, this economic development person is not going to receive a pack and say, this is what we've thought of so far. It's your job to implement it. They're going to start thinking of, that person's going to start thinking about developing a plan.
Paul?
Well, it really is an answer to Brock's statement or question. But and Neil's been, sitting in along with us as part of county council. But, my push on this, or, what I feel is the support behind me to attempt to push this forward is, we go back to our priority setting a year ago in April, Neil. And, it was one of the priorities. We started with 65 items and got down to a handful of things at the end of that process. And what did pop up was to have we have many assets within the county. We need to have a look at those assets and make sure that we're utilizing them to the utmost. So through that priority setting was really the start of it in my mind. That, also it was the municipal airports, but Harbor and Goderich was another one, just for an example. So that's where my push is. That's come directly from county council in that priority setting. So, it's their wish. So
It was one of, I believe, 7 that saw that it's in the top 7 out of 65, and that will be the general direction that new staff will be instructed to move forward on. And the thing of it is, since we are discussing it here between 2 townships and the users, that I think that brings it even closer to the top of the pile.
So I just to add to that, it's really the question of what role do the airports, there's a lot of questions to be answered here, Brock, and it needs to be looked at in a comprehensive fashion. What's role in the economy within the county do those airports play? What impact, could they have if they, were expanded or use was changed or, turned in a different direction? And, this is what we need to be investigating and researching.
So if this group could come up with some seeds of ideas to give them, there might be a very important contribution that we could make from this group.
I think that would be, we'd be off and running, because it's just going to fit right into what needs to be looked at in regards to what the Economic Development Board would want to do.
Pat, you want to
Yeah,
comment?
I was just going to mention, so when I started putting the feasibility study together, it wasn't even on the radar for Huron County to be discussing it. It's just when we kind of put that on the list, we sort of said, we've been saying this for years, that this is a regional asset. And I'm wondering if, there are shared services with Goderich, and can we really look at how this could service regionally? Because airports are not about the community they service locally. They're, you could draw 150, 200 kilometer circle around them, and that's really your drawing card. So it's very encouraging, I think, from my perspective, that Huron County at this time is considering this, and that it's moved as high to the priority list as it has is very exciting for our airport.
Well, if I may, don't take this as a promise of anything. It's an investigation. And, if it, is seen to play a big role, then the Economic Development Board will be, moving in a direction to figure out what their role in, promoting it or helping it develop. But it really is an investigation to see really how it affects the economy, how big of a addition to what goes on within the county, and possibly, how big it could be, if there's adjustments made or whatever. So it's really something to be studied and you know, there's none of us sitting around the table here right at this point that know where that might take us.
Okay.
With
Do you want to
Yeah.
comment on shared
So with
services?
respect to shared services, Town of Goderich, it's my understanding, I have not connected with Larry McCabe, but it's my understanding that they have not submitted any sort of a proposal to the county either, and are probably awaiting this study.
They have you know, you'd like to be well aware, they have a substantial deficit year to year on its operations.
Mhm.
So, you know, in the state of their airstrip is, you know, soon needs some very,
Extensive.
soon needs a fair bit of money spent on it. So there's a great question as to how, you know, how that moves forward, or, you know, what is done there. So you might be quite right in saying we haven't heard anything from them. They may be just, you know, watching and seeing where we get to in regards to the, you know, setup of the ECDF board, and, you know, they're well aware of your feasibility report and the information that you've gathered together so far. So I do know that much.
So,
Go ahead.
do you feel that it's a possibility that the feasibility study may look at opportunities for Huron County airports to partner? I understand they may be losing their manager and it's a fully staffed facility.
I think this will be done through the Economic Development Board. I think it'll be that big picture view of, you know, how we should look at, you know, the municipal airports. I think it would, yes, it will look at them singularly, but I think it will look at their role to the county also. So if there's some way of joining forces together, or whatever, I'm sure that will be looked at too.
Player development, 4.1.3.3.1.
I actually just had my hand up before you went on to that. I was just gonna
Sorry,
add,
go
that's
ahead
okay,
then.
on to the previous conversation. And I just wanted to share with everyone here. Airports require a very specific knowledge and a lot of expertise, of which I admit I am not an expert on. I have spent 10 years trying to learn all the acronyms that the pilots use. And I do feel that there's an opportunity, if Goderich is looking at any type of restructuring or hiring, to have a singular source for that knowledge base, because there's a lot of stuff, whether you're dealing with NAV Canada or Transport Canada and all the regulations and requirements that we're duplicating at both airports, when one person with the proper training and knowledge could be sharing that. And then of course it doesn't take all of that knowledge to move the snow and all of the things that have to happen on the ground. So that's just something to think about as we move forward. It's a very unique asset, and it requires some very specialized skill set to manage properly.
Excellent point.
Yeah, I think you're quite correct in that, and I'm just thinking, you know, the harbor situation. I bet, you know, there's individuals there involved with the, is it a harbor commission that's set up to run that, and, you know, they'll know more about harbors than, you know, they can care to at the onset of that. But it's quite a unique thing, and it is specific knowledge you have to have. And your airports are really a federal jurisdiction, so it is quite unique and a little bit off from what we're used to. So I think that's a very good comment that, you know, as municipalities, we look to each other. You know, we have to do the same things all the time. You know, we're back and forth for information. You don't have to reinvent the wheel every day because your neighbors are dealing with the same things. So I think that could be the same situation with the airports here in the county.
Okay.
And then new payments.
for new hangars, do you have anything?
Yeah, I can give some
that
information on it. Fly around me. So since we have decided, our council has decided to progress, move forward with the airport in status quo, we have had some uptake in interest on the hangar situation. So Apex Helicopters has met with us several times with his interest in building a new hangar and a landing pad. And his preferred location is across from hangar B3. So for anyone, that is the one closest to the south. And he would build it on the other side of the taxiway. And it looks as though he would not begin construction until possibly September. But we're, I guess, working out all of the details. And in order for us to build hangars as we get closer to the runway, we have to ensure that we know what our height limitations are in all the transition zones and takeoff zones and such. So off of the perpendicular from the runway, we need to know the gradual lift of a 1 to 7 slope on elevation so that we're not building anything that would impact that, because that has to be clear airspace. It's similar to why the farmer can't grow corn right next to the runway. So I have engaged the services of Huron Geomatics to take a look at drawing us that line as a reference along our taxiway. They did survey work for the entire airport about 2 or 3 years ago. Nav Canada required an upgraded survey. They wanted to confirm the elevation of the runway. I don't know what they thought was going to happen in 20 years, that it was going to increase or lower, but anyways, but they had a whole bunch of requirements, and that's for our GPS approach and for out-of-station reports at the airport. So the great news is Huron Geomatics is local, and they were fantastic. They drove up and down the runways with their Google car, I call it, you know, the car that does all the surveying and stuff, and we're able to do 3-dimensional mapping. And so for a very small fee, he's going to provide for us the mapping. So when you're so many feet down the taxiway, or meters or hundreds of meters, how high can you build? And by having that data, then we will have a point at which we can tell people how close they can get to that runway. And the importance of that is we want to try to move the Apex hangar as close to the runway as we can, and then move his landing pad even closer to the runway without interfering with that space, to provide more space for future growth. So that's one thing that's going on there. I've also had interest from another private pilot who is interested in building a hangar to the north of B1, which is the hangar right now closest to the north. And there's a smaller, a large enough lot for a hangar. And he's just taking a look at what size he wants and what he's going to do in it. There was some back and forth between the planner in Morris Turnberry and myself, because he also wanted to store some vehicles in the hangar and was out of permitted use, and back and forth we went. And in the end, it is not a permitted use, but he, so I cannot put that in the lease that he's permitted to park them there, but the parking things in there is complaints driven. So it's not like people are standing there checking what's in everybody's hangar. So we can't officially permit it, but unless his neighboring hangars decide to complain about it, he has a couple antique cars. So yeah, I think he is moving forward, just working out the rate and the price and his building requirements. So we've been back and forth with the CBO and him. So that could be a second hangar. He would like to build this year, but we're just working through those details and whether he'll get all of that worked out. It's very much up to the hangar builder to design their hangar and submit that building for approval. That's both of where they're at. They're both in the stages of trying to figure out what exactly their needs are going to be. And we're working with them to work out all of the details on the lease. And I think through this process, I've realized that we need to sort of take a look at the land that's out there that is currently cut every day between the hangar and the apron. So between the taxiway and apron, and potentially how can we build there? How many hangars can actually fit there? How will people access them if we build there? Because as we suggested in the report, we wouldn't at this time invest in a lot taxiways and fill and things to build massive taxiways and things for huge growth unless we had a third-party investor, because that we're just not set up for that at this time. So we don't have a master plan, and that would be something that would be helpful from the economic development group to sort of, if they're looking at the two airports, what is a master plan? What do they look like? Where do we want to be 30, 40 years down the road with our airport, so we can really know what land we should save for this use or that use, or because right now it's really just been hangars have gone up. Well, we've built 3 in 20 years, so it's not like they're going up every day, but they're really driven by the desire of the person who wants to build them, and then it's just working through the details. There are some challenges with how much water we have out there, and there is no sewer. And so because Apex is an employer and has so many employees, he is being required by the building department to build a septic system and put a toilet into one of his hangars that can accommodate his employees. And so he's going to be doing that to the south of his current hangar. And we've been working through the details on that. So there has been some interest since the report was finalized and council made their decision, which is extremely encouraging. I'm just keeping everybody updated, and I'm going to engage the services of my committee, our helpers, when we sort of map out where future growth can take place.
Okay. Is there any questions? Trevor?
As it looks now, what, based on the scope out there today, how many hangars would be considered to be full at this point?
Well, we have the 2 new ones potentially, so that would give us 5. And if they were to be built in the same size and configuration that they are now, they might be able to fit, and that's why we're trying to map it out, 2 more on that taxiway on the opposite side. Our challenge is that the well service cuts through that land, and we need to leave that. And we would have to leave enough space somewhere for a taxiway if we wanted a second row on the other side. So I would say there's at least room for 2. And then we would have to build another taxiway adjacent to either the apron or the taxiway to allow for another road to begin. But that would be in what we would call the cleared land now that is flat and level and grass. I don't know, perhaps some of the other pilots can suggest, I mean, somebody comes in and said, I want to build a 100 by 150 hangar, that's going to take a lot of space. But right now, most of them are about 55 by 55-ish, and that's sort of one of the the private pilots is recommending he's going to build. The Apex land space will be the size of 2 or more current hangars because he's doing the landing pad and a larger hangar than we have now. I don't know if that answers your question.
That answers my
I
question.
hope to map it out a little bit clearer and sort of give, so if we're going to build a taxiway, it would go here. And the other thing we've been looking at is what would the cost be to bring municipal water to the site for potential growth. And one of the new hangars was asking, can we get natural gas to the site? And neither are available now. But you can get fiber optic internet. It goes right to the sites. So it's kind of depends what's been put in. The hope is that we can try and work with the water department and see, is there a way to piggyback off of where the water is supplied to Westcast? Or are we going to have to bring it all the way from the other side of the road? And that's going to be an ongoing discussion. And right now our well is ample for what our use is, but we have to look at growth and where would that all come from?
You know, I like the idea of master plan, no different than a site plan for development or anything like that. I like that idea. I think the committee should have some significant influence on what that looks like and how they see it developed and what their thoughts are, because they're obviously they're the majority stakeholder in this whole deal. They're the ones that use it. We as the municipalities are owners, but you know, that's honesty. They utilize it every day. So I think to give them some more skin in the game to be able to set a site plan and provide it to the municipalities for approval, and let us, so by choose, poke holes in it, really. I think it establishes a better communication between what we have there currently and where we think we need to be in 10 years or 20 years or whatever. I think, to me, that's all encompassing on this whole ECDev conversation, but I think it's separate. I think the committee should decide on how they see this development, potential development, and how it becomes a bigger scheme for future growth, because I don't think we could sit around here as council and probably would be no better off than getting some of the guys off the street that have never flown an airplane.
That's how I feel.
Sorry, I hope I'm not speaking for everybody else, but I know it would be for me.
If I could just add to that, most airports that are growing now have a master plan for all of their land. And most airports also have their industrial and commercial users in a different location than their recreational pilots and private pilot hangars. And that's just because of the different kinds of uses they need and requirements and space and activities. It doesn't say it has to be that way, but the ECDev report will be very interesting, because we'll also be able to read what kind of growth we can anticipate. Is it going to be more private pilots and building and moving to our site, or is it going to be more industrial and mechanics and things like that? So that will also help drive the plan, as well as obviously the expertise of the guys who are there all the time. I think all these pieces are a piece of the puzzle. But yeah, thanks.
Yes, I could make some comments if you wish.
Certainly, Don.
I'm not a very good speaker. I sometimes ramble a little bit more than I should, but
We have a lot of that around here.
well, that makes me feel a little better. I agree that there should be a master plan. I'm not sure how much has to go into that to actually come up with a plan. I don't know if you need a professional to do it, but I think there's a lot of expertise in this room that all the individuals are running businesses or working for places that you have to make decisions and so forth. I don't think there are any idiots in this room at all. And I think there's a lot of people that could maybe add a lot to a master plan without it going professional. I have actually submitted to the committee and to Pat what I would suggest for a hangar layout a couple of years ago, but maybe 4 years ago now. And I strongly recommend that any additional hangars go, excuse me, on the opposite side of the present hangars. In other words, it would be to the west or the northwest, yes, of the present hangars. And this entails, of course, a lot of fill. I shouldn't say a lot of fill. It requires at least 2 foot of fill to go in there, and involves a taxiway and possibly a roadway into it. I think my first thought on that was back in 2004 when they'd already finished excavating the main street here. And I'm not sure where all the fill went out of that, but the next year they did the north half, and I was hoping that they could have acquired some of that fill, but apparently it was spoken for by the cemetery. I would like to pass around a photograph that was taken recently at Hanover. This was April 24th this year, where they had an event up there, and I'll grant you this is all recreational. Most of these are recreational aircraft. There were a few corporate, but they had some 40 airplanes in there. And I would think our ramp, the paved ramp in front of the terminal building, would likely accommodate 12. Yeah. And the ramp and the grass area as it is now, maybe another 15. As you can see from that photo, they do take space. So it's characteristic of aircraft. I know funding is always a problem as far as Phil is concerned, or taxiways and so forth, but I think there's a lot of, if we're a little bit more optimistic about the airport, and I can appreciate that Pat has it way down on her list of priorities. I don't think there's any question about that. She has a lot of responsibility, and it's difficult to get into the mood to really push the airport, and she gets a lot of things that she has to do by necessity for the airport without pushing for some future growth. But there are people that will help, other pilots and so forth, for events and volunteering to help. But it seems to be that volunteering is sort of frowned upon. Again, I might be rambling a bit, but when I mention volunteering, they have a very active airport committee or commission at Hanover. And one of the members, who's also a pilot, actually renovated the bathrooms in the terminal building. And some of the pilots helped the manager put a new shingles on the roof. And I would think that would be a no-no here, right?
I can't comment.
No comment, I know.
I don't know how they do it there.
I'm just stating what has happened up there. There are a number of things that we could have volunteered for, and we've sort of gone back because of the I guess must be the considered risk involved. But I do feel strongly that the hangar should go on the other side as much as possible in order to save that grass area for extra parking in larger events. That particular photo shows about 40 aircraft. I have an airstrip 6 miles north of here, and we've had several fly-ins. I think the biggest one we've had 32 aircraft in. So it's very possible. They can be fundraisers, and there's a lot of events that we can have at the airport. That,
I interject there, Don. Those barbecues used to have with the Optimus. We had 25 or 30 planes at the time.
Yep.
Parked on that lawn.
Yep. That's my comments as far as hangars are concerned.
Okay.
I should make one other comment if I might.
Certainly.
Last year, Pat had commented that since the study, there's been interest in building hangars. Frankly, there was 5 interested in building hangars last year. My feeling is that the council and the North Huron Council and the committee should have gotten together last year at this time or earlier and had the discussion that you had on May 16th this year, and possibly the study would not have been necessary. As pilots, we could point out some of the pros and cons of the airport, what we would like to see, what could be done. And but in the meantime, 3 of the people that wanted to build hangars last year moved to Hanover. 2 have built hangars there, and 1 is renting. And to that end, I'll send around another photo for you to look at, and a letter from one of the buyers, or one of the builders that emailed to me. Send that around. The one fellow was from the Burby area, and he had choices to go to Kincardine, Wingham, or Hanover. And his preference was definitely Wingham, and he'd been here for 3 years, renting space in a hangar. And when he was ready to build, he moved to Hanover. And basically because it was going to be another year before he could build a hangar. And he's built a very nice one out there.
Brock?
I'm thinking of looking forward and developing a plan. I'm wondering if it wouldn't be sensible to decide what areas are the most fruitful for development. Like would it be emergency services, business, corporate, professional, recreational, and all of that sort of thing, which would be the most effective, and which direction should we go in terms of promoting this and encouraging people to express their views or interest in signing up and coming here. I don't know if you have any thoughts about what are the preferred areas, or does it matter? We'll just accept any kind of use of the area.
Well, my comment on that would be that the master plan would provide some guidance as to where certain size hangars could be accommodated. Aircraft that we have don't have the wingspan, maybe some of the like Westcast corporate jet had. And if they wanted to build a hangar here, they would need a heavier, more taxiway and a larger hangar, of course. And I've been in airports where they've had master plans, and one in particular in Wisconsin is they have built a completely new airport, and you couldn't imagine how well it's laid out as far as corporate hangars, or private hangars, and the commercial operators that are on the airport, emergency services and helicopters and so forth. But one other thing is that I've heard several times here this evening that the pilots at the airport have been referred to as the users. We are, but in a small way, believe it or not. I don't believe a lot of people in town or the area realize the number of aircraft that actually use the airport. They don't necessarily make it any more lucrative for us, but we have planes that come in that for training purposes, doing cross-country flights. Some might buy fuel. We of course have the Orange come in, but there are a lot of, well, as an example, I was driving home from Toronto one evening, and it was in the winter time, and the weather wasn't that great, but I saw lights on the runway, and so I stopped, and a twin engine aircraft came in, I think from London, and one engine was shut down, and the passenger got out, carried a package over, passed it over the gate to a Westcast employee, I assume, got back in the plane, and away they went. They wouldn't have been on the ground 10 minutes. And unless you were there, you wouldn't have realized they were there at all. And I've talked to people that some don't realize there is an airport, and others think that there's absolutely no activity out there. Quite frequently, you go out there and there'll be a plane sitting on the ramp. Could be from the States, could be from up north, Timmins, who knows. I've provided transportation for them going over to the Coverall. I've seen them come into Royal Homes. I admit I haven't seen any for the Pioneer Siege yet.
We have a doctor that flies in from Toronto once a month to work in a Murray for the weekend.
Okay, and Pat?
Yeah, thanks. Just a couple of things. And this is just more for background for people to understand that our airport was designed and has always been planned as a partial service airport. And it is why the deficit is much lower than a lot of our peer airports like Goderich and Stratford. They run a full service airport, meaning that they're staffed there most of the time, especially in the summer. And I think they're 24 hours in the summer at Goderich. They run 2 full-time and a number of part-time staff. And what I'm getting at is it's difficult for like Rod is there a couple hours a day, I think, depending on the day. And but he can't catch every plane. Planes are supposed to register when they land, and many don't at our airport. Whereas if you have a full service, they're catching that plane's tag number as it's going. I don't know if I used that right. Tag number. I just wanted to point out that, when you say that it's not one of my priorities, that's council's decision what our priorities are, and how much budget is allocated and how much staff time is allocated to a project. When we wrote the feasibility study and I said option A was selected, it was to continue status quo. So if council wants greater service, more investment, and growth, they're going to have to make those decisions. And I think it'll be worth us listening to what economic development has to say to answer some of Brock's questions along the lines of where's that growth most likely going to come from and what's going to be the most valuable growth for the region. I think all growth is good, but where do we target that growth? And then I just wanted to mention that I want to commend Blair, who's here with us this evening. He runs an all volunteer help and support the very successful jet rally. So that is a very big event that draws hundreds of people to our airport. And yeah, volunteering is very encouraged. And Blair will tell you it takes a lot of work to put an event like that together. and his whole club, and he also volunteers as the club chair to run that. So we do support the volunteers the best we can, but it really has to be volunteer driven, and we're there to support it. So yeah, it's just it's a great event, and I want to thank you for that.
And can I just talk?
If Reeves, that's
Go ahead. No,
Oh, okay.
go ahead.
Just to pick up on Don's point about leaving space around the apron and some open area. This jet rally has got a lot of press. The last year's was very successful. The weather was good. It was printed up in magazines internationally. This year we have a lot of interest in this jet rally, and we have a lot of individuals coming up from the US. We have a team of guys coming up from Dallas. We have guys coming from Phoenix. It's put Wingham, the Wingham Jet Rally, the town of Wingham, on the map. My concern would be if hangars were to take up all of that space, we wouldn't be able to hold the Wingham Jet Rally there unless, you know what I mean? And I think that picture that Don passed around shows that you do need space for events like that. I expect this year we had 65 model pilots registered. We might push 70 or 80 this year. And, the event is growing. It brings in, last year we did an economic impact study, and all the pilots fill out when they registered what they were spending, totaled about $50,000 over that week. So it brings in a lot. It fills up the restaurants, it fills up all the hotels, and we rent, a lot of tents and barbecues and porta potties and garbage cans, and that all adds up. So it's a fantastic facility.
3 or 4 times.
Yeah. Well, we're getting watered down. It's a great facility. It's a real privilege for you guys to let us use it, but it does require space, right? So.
To that end, I'd like to pass on another photograph I should have mentioned. My wife and I are a member of the Cessna 180, 185 Club, which is presently based in Texas. And we put on a fly-in up at Kincardine a number of years ago. And we had 61 airplanes in. Most of them were in for almost 5 days. And most of them were in for 5 days. There's at least 40 of them arrived on the Saturday, and they all left on Wednesday, Thursday. And they were quite a boost to the town. 60 airplanes, like they had 130, 140 people. And the ladies loved to shop downtown. They loved to parade at night at Kincardine and so forth. But it'll give you an idea of the space that was required. And we've been to a number of these conventions, and they do require, I think the most we've ever been at is Cody, Wyoming, something like 135 airplanes were at it. So it's, we're not going to get it here. We don't have the accommodations for it, but at the same time, these events do happen, and who knows in the future. I do think that center ramp space should be preserved as much as possible.
Okay. But,
Flown a lot of Superior Airways 180s for years ago.
I bought mine in 1966, so I've had it for 50 years now. So.
They're 69.
Trevor?
Yeah, I'm hearing lots of ideas from this group. The question I have is that you know, does the idea get from idea to fruition before something happens? And I'm not objecting about the process we have. But my question is that if the needs of the airport are a different way from the ECDEV scenario and whatever, the part where I would like to see something happen is that this committee be given some more direction or terms of reference or whatever the case may be, to give them some skin to make some decisions that would affect how, obviously through the municipality because we're the owner. But I think sometimes in the municipal world, the idea from idea to fruition takes way too long, and it may impact some of the things that they're looking to do because of municipal politics. And believe me, I'm young at municipal politics world, but what I've learned in the last 2 years, some things take longer than they really need to. So I question that kind of the status quo deal. I'm okay with status quo, but I'm wondering if there's things that we can get the committee and some guidance on what they have some authority to do and what they don't have to do. Because I think some of that might help begin the process of changing how things are operated or things are not operated, whatever the case may be. I'm hearing from Don volunteerism is a concern, but I'm hearing from another group that it's welcome. So, you know, the part that I'm struggling with is it or is it not an issue? So from that standpoint.
Henry?
Thank you. It is an issue. If you go back to the minutes a few years ago, speaking of volunteering, I don't quite understand why in Hanover, once volunteers can get together and put a new roof on. I think that's fantastic. Or do a reno and whatever it may be. Myself and Angus McDonald a few years back offered to put in a whole new kitchen to the little office to the west of the main, to the east of the main room there, the common room. That was basically shut down. We offered to put in the kitchen, the appliances, do all the work on a volunteer basis, wouldn't cost a penny. And that was an absolute no-no because it came up right away. No fault to Pat or anybody else, right away to all the rules and regulations that we had to go through, and food poisoning and insurance and who knows what else. And basically what we wanted to do is put in a kitchen that if a pilot lands, they can make themselves a sandwich and have some stuff in there. It won't cost much to put in some milk there and some juice and some bread, a toaster, very basics, you know. And I still wanted to do that. That offer is still open, but just it was the weirdest thing to offer somebody to do something like that, and there was absolutely, it didn't go anywhere at all. And this is a real shame. We want to make it more user friendly. We want to volunteer. And yes, we can volunteer on the outside. We can help direct planes and tell them where to park and watch the airspace when it's a fantastic jet rally is going on. But when it comes down to helping a little bit or doing something within this municipality, seem to be struck down. While other ones, they can do it. So what's with that? Why not? We're putting in our own money, our own time, our own effort, and then it's, oh, well, you don't have the right insurance. Before you know it, your wife might not be able to go there and water the flowers or put the little plants in around the building because it won't be allowed. So it's a real, it's a struggle. And I have a few questions. Also, the mapping, Pat, is there any kind of time frame? I know it's quite reasonable, but do we know when? Because that will depend when that comes in before they can start building the hangars then, correct?
The Huron geomatics
Yes.
mapping? I'm expecting it early July, end of June, like he's on it, he has the data. There was a bit of a mix up in some of the communication, so that's been a bit of a week delay, but really at this point, I mean, it wouldn't stop anyone building to the north. it would stop his building. And my last conversation with him was he would not be building because his concrete guy can't get the start to work until September. So that's not what's going to delay. We'll have that well in advance of that.
And natural gas, bringing natural gas to the site shouldn't be a problem at all. There's some people there, it goes right by. If we have some people that are interested in that, and maybe it's something we want to look at ourselves too for the main terminal building, for heating in the winter time to save some costs. If a few of us get together and you split that cost, it's quite reasonable. I've been approached, a good friend of mine is a nurse and her husband is an AME and airplane mechanical engineer, currently working in Kuwait. Would love to come here to this area and start his business. He asked me a few times, got an email from him again the other day, what's happening and what are we doing? And so there's a lot of things that have to be decided sooner than later so we can move forward and bring more revenue to the airport. And also, I would like to see us as a committee just brainstorming and have somebody with a piece of paper, the old-fashioned way, and just throw things out, write it all down, anything to do to get more funds in and more activity and more awareness. And the more you bring awareness to the airport, the more activities you do, the more awareness you have, the more people become aware of it. Hey, there is an airport there, I didn't know. In the past, there have been people asking for wedding pictures. Not allowed. You can't even have a basic little wedding there. And as you know, people want to have their wedding there. Just the ceremony, no parties, no nothing, just for the actual the service itself, and bring all the chairs and stuff. Wasn't allowed. Insurance reasons. And I'm thinking, why? Is it really that bad if somebody goes there and have their pictures taken and have their ceremony? That's what they want to do. Walk down the beautiful driveways. We have 2 driveways. Well treated, it's beautiful for pictures. Some of the things I'm looking at it from a strictly a business point of view, makes absolute 0 sense at all. But come on, please.
Just some background information for council. Our municipal policy does not cover anything on the air side of the airport. It is a different policy that we purchase separate out of our municipal policy. So there is a difference in insurance at an airport than there is when we can hold an event in a park and things like that. So there is a significant difference. I can go back to a few things. The kitchen was an amazing offer, and we looked at that over a few meetings, and we had asked, so once we build the kitchen, who's going to maintain it, clean it? And at the time, it was actually suggested as more of a snack bar type service, and I'm not sure. So we went back to the people who were going to the committee and asked how would that be accommodated, and that was sort of one of the stumbling blocks. And then there was the size of which the health unit would require equipment to be in, and okay. So I feel as though the message here is that I haven't been doing my job. And in fact, I have looked at every single one of these suggestions and tried to make it work, but I only have so much time and so much staff time. So if we were gonna have a snack bar, it would require, I can't get enough money out of the committee to the snack bar at an arena where 50,000 people visit a year to cover the cost of running that snack bar. So that was the proposal. If it's a different scenario, kitchen or a self-help kitchen or whatever, that's not what we had discussed last time. The wedding scenario, it's an airport, it is not a wedding venue. We do not permit weddings there. So those are some of the things I just wanted to let everybody understand. Everything that goes on at the airport is a challenge because it's a different policy. It's federal jurisdiction. What they allow at one airport may not be what we allow at ours, because in our opinion, we operate our airport based on municipal, provincial, and federal standards. And even though we don't have to, if that makes any sense. So, and it sounds funny, but we don't have to abide by zoning, but we do because we are a municipality and we enforce our own zoning. Then when we're in another municipality, we're going to abide by their zoning as well. And that's just one example. We always have to go back to the zoning and all this kind of thing. Another airport may choose not to respect the zoning and just do what they want. So that is why sometimes you get one airport saying, we absolutely allow people to do this. In our airport, that's not how we've been practiced to date. And I don't know if that's a very good explanation, but I'm happy to try and explain it better.
My response, loosen up.
They become far too paranoid.
So, okay.
A lot of-
Response to
and a
that.
lot
Well, you
of-
say, Pat, you can't go inside the fence. What about up in front of the terminal building? Is that still off limits, like for liability and all that?
For what?
For weddings, for example? Like you're not inside the fence, so you're not in the airport portion of it. You're at the airport, I realize.
I guess as a municipality, we have a number of other sites that are appropriate for weddings and we allow them in. And the airport is not been designated as a wedding location. If that is where we feel that this business will be driven and we feel we'll get a lot of revenue and opportunity by hosting weddings at the airport, by all means, we can look into that. But people can hold their weddings at the gazebo in the park, which is designed for that and has hydro and washrooms and other things. There's a Lions Pavilion. There's outside of the complex, people have held tents there where they're hosting it at the Knights of Columbus Center. There are no washrooms, there are no other facilities suitable for weddings. So I don't really want to get off on a sidebar about weddings, but there was a lot of discussion made about that. The other challenge with a wedding is that it's set for 2 o'clock and all your guests sits down. You can't close it to medevac and they come in on a call. Yes, some people would say that's okay because I chose the airport, but other people would complain and say, my wedding was ruined because medevac came in. But it's an airport first, not a wedding venue. That's all I'll comment on that.
James?
I think Don mentioned, or one of you guys mentioned that we should be meeting a little more often as council and this committee. Some of these things we've never heard before.
I agree.
Some of them are new to us, and I'm really glad you guys have came. I helped build a new church in Auburn, and the health unit came in and said, you cannot put a kitchen in the basement of this church. But you can put in, well, you can't cook the food there, but you can bring the food in and serve it. It's called a server. We met the requirements that we had to have your sinks, all this was met. And we've had weddings in there of 250, 300 people in that building. But we're not, the health unit passed all this to make it work. So we're a server. We don't prepare the meals. So they'll have people come in with their barbecue out in the parking lot, cook all the food. Cardiffs, most of you know the Cardiffs will come in, cook for the wedding, and the food is carried in and put on in there. We're not breaking any law. We're doing what they asked us to do. And I think we have some areas here that we should be, as council, looking into some of these areas as that we're not breaking the law. Some of them have different ways to approach this. I think we should be looking at it.
Trevor?
So, I don't have any issue with looking at it. The issue that I have is that if it's only bringing publicity to the airport and not actual revenue, is the liability or risk outweighing the potential? So I know everybody says insurance and liability risk. Well, if there isn't a pocket in this municipality who's got a bigger pocket than the municipality, I don't know who it is. So whenever something happens, who's the first one that gets dinged? It's the municipality. So as much as loosen up is a great term, we have to be careful about how loose we want to make things. So are we too stringent? Are we not too stringent? That's up for debate. I don't think that's the debate here. The debate for me is, let's have a discussion about what suggestions have been out there. And maybe, like Jim's saying, okay, let's have a conversation in council about what our risks is and are we willing to lower those risks or mitigate those risks to not have the issue about that. So that to me is the more of a conversation about whether we do it or we don't. But I look at it, sure, from a financial standpoint, if I'm having a wedding and the municipal can't charge them a dime for it, is that really what I want? When is it? That's the question from a municipality is that what I want to do when we have the same menu somewhere else that we don't charge neither if they want to go on and they pay for it in their taxes today if they're a resident of the North Huron. So these are kind of things that I'm talking about. I agree. I think we need to be careful about how, just because another municipality does something, they may not be doing it the right way either. So we got to be careful about just because they're loose, we should be just flying by the same looseness.
So I think what we're hearing here is that we have members of the committee with us this evening. And lots of ideas are coming forward, some that have been raised in the past, and maybe there are new ideas that are going to come to the table. Council has opted to move forward with the airport status quo, but they also did say they wanted to bring the committee to the table to look at how we could expand the role of that committee and really develop some terms of reference around what your role could be, bringing your ideas to the table, and are there opportunities to expand the use of the airport, and perhaps things that would have an economic benefit. So I think we have to recognize that our current budget level provides for a very basic service. That's not to say that if we do expand the role of this committee and really bring you to the table and look at bringing forward some ideas that council can consider, then I think you have to look at each one of those proposals on its own merit. We do the investigation, we bring a proposal forward, outlining all of the advantages and disadvantages, all of the hoops that you have to go through, the health unit, the requirements, whatever they may be, and you make a decision on those case by case. And if you see that there's an advantage to implementing that, then it gets presented to council and they can make the decision whether they're going to allocate budget. So I think it's a matter of maybe formalizing the process a little more and utilizing the strength of the people that we have at the table to make decisions. We have to recognize some of them, while they may seem like great ideas, maybe once you do the investigation and you get them on paper, they're not that are going to be feasible and they're going to grow the business. So those are just my comments. What I'm hearing from the committee is, good brainstorming, and it sort of leads into that last agenda item of what do you see your role in the future here as a committee?
Can I just ask a question? Is this airport committee officially a committee of council?
Yes, they are.
Then why have I not seen in ages a report from the minutes of the airport committee? I can't remember the last time I saw one.
I can answer some of that. So they've been designated an airport committee of council since we've been North Huron. However, since the confirmatory, or the new bylaw 54/2015, which was the committee appointment policy, which is why it's on the agenda tonight, came to be, the airport was in sort of this holding pattern to decide where we were going to go. So it is on tonight's agenda for that purpose. There is no memorandum of understanding, and there are no terms of reference as a committee of council. So if this committee and council determine that they will continue as a committee of council, then we would have to establish those terms of reference under the policy which our CAO has developed, and they would have to adhere to all of the requirements. The committee, after some discussion, may choose, no, we don't want it to be a committee of council. In fact, we would prefer to be another form of committee, and then still a memorandum of understanding would have to be presented. So that is absolutely why it's on the agenda this evening.
Yolanda?
Sorry, I'm just gonna kind of back up a little bit. I just wanted to ask you, Pat, what did you mean about the zoning having two different zones? Is it because the airport's in Morris Turnberry and it's run by North Huron? Is that what you meant zoning wise?
Yes, we're in a different municipality, so we follow the Morris Turnberry zoning bylaw.
And so that really dictates what we can and cannot do in regards to having photo ops there or for weddings or.
No, that was more of an insurance decision. It's their zoning bylaw would determine what is permitted to be built,
Okay.
how the space can be used, what are the permitted uses, and those types of things. because its jurisdiction is federal, the CBO actually of Morris Turnberry has no jurisdiction over there to, let's say, provide a tent permit.
Okay.
So then we have to go into a private tent permission type procedure. And so, for example, as we're building our current hangars, our CBO is not issuing a permit, he's issuing a letter of permission to build. So they'll still pay the same fees and go through the same steps, but in fact, no provincial CBO has any authority inside the lands. And in fact, through the research we did the last couple of years over all of the zoning, when Morris Turnberry was going through their zoning, it was discovered that in fact, there was a lot of risk for them to take on that role at an airport. So they have put that over our ownership as far as permits and stuff. So it gets, there's a lot of layers at an airport and every decision becomes more complicated because of that. And they're not my rules. They're the policies and practices of the jurisdictions. But that, you're correct, we're in a different zone, a different municipality.
John?
Last meeting was the first meeting I was on the airport committee. And what I had got out of that though is it was more North Huron's expectations of what they wanted built, not Morris Turnberry's, and not just to a legal standard. It sounds like they wanted something built above standard is what I was getting as part of the problem.
I believe your reference is to the pole construction hangar discussion.
Yeah.
So yes, pole construction is permitted in the building permit, but because of the type of lease and they're building it on land they don't own, we're not permitting pole construction. That is our current CBO's recommendation based on the longevity of a pole construction building, and we're signing long-term leases. So that is the current position of that coming from our CBO. And I don't know, and I've been over this conversation numerous times with him. So instead we require some sort of building on a concrete platform or foundation type presentation. But I have to also admit that each hangar has to be looked at individually because once a hangar is a certain size, then pole construction is obviously also off the table.
What the hangars out there right now, are they all concrete then?
Yes.
No, they're pole
They're
construction.
pole, concrete floors.
And how old are they?
96.
98,
And are they
98, and the third one's 08.
And are they standing the test? I think
Fire
the issue
plane.
here is hoops that people are made to jump over, and that's possibly what these people mean by relaxing a bit here. I'm not sure, but I'm just guessing. And I think these pole sheds are lasting for 67 years. And what's the length of the leases?
21 years, I believe.
So-
21 years less
so-
a day, yeah.
And I think what I heard is we're worried about having to clean up a mess when these people moved out. Well, if you're getting 60 years out of them and you're getting, I don't know, what, $800 a year or whatever it is for the lease, I think you should be happy that people are building. That's my opinion.
So these are the types of issues that, in my mind, come to us. That's a conversation that council needs to have on a recommendation from our CBO to say, is that really what we want to do? And that hasn't, as my times on council, I have not seen that come across my desk. So if that was council before, that's council before's choosing. So, but times change, things change, people's opinions change. If that is, if anything is a significant deterrent or an issue or whatever, then we need to have, council needs to be understanding of those issues and take in their advisement what concerns those are. That to me is a real problem. Like we have staff with minimal time and understanding, but they're only being directed by us and what we've directed them to do. So if that's not right, then the reconsideration needs to be looked at. And you know, as part of my role, I would look at it if that's a deterrent, but I don't know that unless it comes across my desk.
Yolanda?
I think we also have to consider too what the CBO is dictating as per his qualifications that he gets from the province. If the province changes the rules and determines what he can and cannot allow in certain zones, kind of have to respect that. But if that's something that can be looked at and wiggled a little bit, or to see if there can be some changes there, then that's different. But that's up to him, and we don't always see all what he's allowed to say or not say.
Sharon,
So Pat, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe pole construction is permitted.
Yes.
But it has.
In the building code.
Yes, in the building codes, if it's a decision and recommendation of our current CBO not to allow that because of the lease. So again, I think these are some of the issues that should be discussed at the committee level. There should be formal policies with respect to the operation of the airport. So they should come forward with reports and recommendations for council to approve, so.
Have we jumped over a bit because we've kind of missed, we're not talking about road status of the airport committee, but we missed over our national environment thing. If we're gonna stay on track here, we've missed 4.133. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
Okay.
So just to keep us on track, could we just?
one point that I'd like to go back to, and both Blair and Don talked about that center area, with Chris is busy tonight, but I liked Don's idea of the plan, and it was probably 2 years ago, that we basically have another row for commercial. And that was something that I think would be possibly consistent if he would build, if he had access to what he needed for access. If he went west, there would be fill, but he'd be able to have a continuous area with the hangar that he has now and the new one. And that might be worth something to Chris as well. And I think the committee maybe go back to your drawing and refine it a little bit and bring a recommendation to council from the committee as to how the site plan would be laid out. That would be one of the ways that I would see it. Don?
Well, I guess the first problem with going that direction, like Chris is urgent. He wants to get it up. He needs more space. He has, by the way, I'd estimate maybe $2 million worth of helicopters, 3 Bells
Probably
and
more
3,
than that.
yes, and 3 R-44 Robinsons, and a lot of other equipment. And he does need more space, and it would be ideal if he was behind there, but again, it's the funding, and I can appreciate that. And the events where you have a bunch of airplanes in, that's once, twice, 3 times a year maybe, and it would be nice to have the extra space. So I'm not sure if I could even suggest that they go to the west right now, unless we come up with some funds for him to put a taxiway in, or a roadway. He's definitely going to need fill and a roadway, and whether he's prepared to fund that himself, I don't know. And, so I really can't say much more about that. I do have a couple of other comments I would like to make. I believe forgot the name over here. Brock had mentioned about the powers, so to speak, or the agenda for the airport commission or committee. And I've sort of come up with another acronym for it. I call it the B&B. Something like the bicultural and bilingualism, except ours is brochures and bulletin boards. That seems to be about the extent of our authority out there. So with all due respect, Pat, again, she has her plate full, and I can appreciate it. I do have a question for Pat in the with all the measurements and so forth that they have to do for the airport, a question or a wonder anyhow, how necessary that is. You say the federal government requires that?
Yes, so in order for us to maintain our GPS approach,
Oh, for the approach, okay.
that is one,
That
and
answers
then
the
the
question.
attestation reports are signed off annually.
Mhm.
And NAV Canada, every 5 years, requires that we prove that an attestation report, so everyone understands, it is a level of what's the elevation at the center of your taxiway, what's the elevation at the ends of your taxiway, and it has to be within so many millimeters, and
Okay, if it's for the GPS approach, I certainly understand.
and NAV
Yeah,
Canada's
yeah.
requirement.
Because the
yes.
status of this airport is no different than the status of mine, except that you do have the GPS approach on, so.
Yeah, and it's a registered aerodrome and it is required.
As
The
is mine.
attestation is not just for the GPS, that is an NAV Canada requirement.
Another couple comments I'd like to make is that the airport is recreational to some degree for the pilots like myself. I do use mine for transportation. I did use it partly for business years ago. And, but I have family in Minneapolis, and I have made 95 trips to Minneapolis with a plane. And I'm not the only one that's makes trips with their planes. And you see a lot of it out of Hanover, basically because they have a lot more airplanes. But it does show the utility of it. From a recreational standpoint, other than for ourselves, you have swimming pools and ball diamonds and so forth, soccer fields for kids. Out at the airport, the gliders are there in the spring and the fall, and they have to be commended for what they do for those kids. There's a lot of volunteers there that come up and fly the tow plane and look after everything, look after the kids, supervise them, and they're making gentlemen and gentle girls out of those kids. And you see it whenever you talk to one of them out there. It's always sir. They always refer to you as sir. It's a great thing for the kids. A program that we've had out there a few times, not in the last few years, is the Young Eagles program, where we've taken up kids for the first airplane ride. And between ages 6 or 7 and up to about 17. And I recall one time we had 90 of them lined up for their rides. There's no charge for the kids, and the pilots volunteer their airplanes and their time and the fuel. And I think the airport has provided fuel at costs for those rides. We have had a few fly-ins, as Rod has mentioned. The Optimists have put on pancake and egg breakfast, and we've had a number of planes in for that. The other thing that I should mention is that the airport out here is an airport of entry, which means that you can get customs here. And I have had customs here at least 24, 25 times now at the airport. And that's available for most pilots 24/7. And most times you are not met. The customs officer has to come from Kitchener. And 19 times out of 20, they don't show up, but you don't know when that other one is. But anyhow, we don't abuse it, and it is it's extremely handy. And this was acquired when Westcast was here, and it's something that we want to keep utilizing, and it's certainly an asset for the airport. And if I'm not talking too long, I would like to mention that 3 weeks ago today, I called flight service in London to file a flight plan. I was on our way to Minneapolis and had to file a flight plan across the border. And he asked me where I was coming from, and I told him my airstrip, and he said, well, where is that? And I said, it's right north of Wingham Airport. Wingham Airport, that's my favorite. He says, I fly up there in my 172. And I said, I've talked to the manager up there extensively. And he said, that's the most beautiful airport I've seen anywhere. And I can agree with that. We've had a lot of comments about it. None of this is making any money, but I guess what I'm saying is that there's a general feeling about the airport is an asset, and it's a nice asset. And if we could just take advantage of that and keep the word spread a bit. We don't want, there's always a risk involved. There actually has been a couple of incidents out there with aircraft, no fault of the airport, and it's usually the pilots or the aircraft. And so there's been no liability that way, but there are aircraft that come in and you don't know they're there and they're gone again, but it is a service that they're having. One other item, which I don't know if Blair should speak to it or I should, is about camping for the jet rally.
Yeah, I'd just like to ask how Pat, listed off things that are not allowed at the airport because for insurance reasons, and I believe camping is one of them. We have been camping though at the airport for the last 7 jet rallies, and we're not this time for insurance reasons. It's not allowed at the airport. And Henry's very generously offered his farm, so we're moving the camper vehicles and tents down to Henry's farm. But for that weekend of the jet rally, I'd like to know what the procedure is to, if you're willing to allow camping at the airport for the jet rally, and how, we're willing to get event insurance and cover that. But Pat, I just like to know if it's a possibility for next year, because even though, Godrich is full and the Linden Inn and so on, there's people that like to come to this event just to watch and participate, and they like to camp, and it's a social thing. There's a little bit of disappointment this year, but it will be taking place at Henry's farm.
Pat?
Just wondering how we.
Yeah, so camping was something that we permitted. Initially, there was 1 or 2 trailers, and it wasn't a big deal. And it wasn't insurance that doesn't permit it, it's the zoning that does not permit it. And the CBO reported to me that he would enforce that no camping is permitted. I went back to Morris Turnberry, to the planner, and had multiple conversations back and forth with her to why not one-off, why not for this event, what if we did this, what if we did that? And she said it's not a permitted activity and is not permitted at the airport, and you can't do it. So the only way that she would allow it was if Blair and his group went through the process of a zoning one-time permit amendment, and the cost of that was over $1,000 just to do the process. So we did go back and forth, and I tried to keep in the loop on that. So I'm just sharing that was the steps we went through, and we couldn't seem to budge on that with the Huron County Planning Department because of what is not permitted there. And it was somewhat frustrating from my perspective, because when we listed what was permitted and not permitted at the airport when we were creating the zoning bylaw, we were very clear that we would allow underwing camping, and there was multiple back and forth. What did that define as, and what was that? And so it was like the camping thing and any residential activity, any stayover activity seemed to be really difficult to push through the Huron County Planning Department. And it was just, they were flat out no's every time we tried to. They did allow the underwing camping because it is permitted at most airports, and defined that, but trailer camping and all of that kind of stuff would not be permitted. So we did go to bat on that one, and we could not get a movement on that. So that is once again something to discuss at the council level with Morris Turnberry, or for their group to take back to their council, but that was where that's coming from.
Yeah, now if the zoning was changed and camping was allowed, for this event or other events, these people that camp there are willing to pay for it. So there is revenue there. In fact, just about all the campers go, you're not charging, send them to camp for the weekend, and we don't. Because, the jet rally's purpose is not to make money, it's just a get-together, it's a rally. But if the zoning was changed and you said, yes, camping is permitted for certain events, certain weekends, there's revenue there for sure.
I was just gonna add, we did also heavily advertise, and I don't know if anyone took us up on it. There's a campground here, a trailer park with all of the hookups, not 5 minutes away. So we tried to encourage people to use that as a already ready to go service for camping. It also provides for the recommended and allowed distance between trailers and all of those kinds of things. And so that's what we were doing.
And I've told all the campers and people who wish to do that about the trailer park and the farm. There's 3 options here. So it's just something to think of.
Yeah, I think it takes away from the whole atmosphere, the whole event, if you're right at the airport or next to it, camping, versus having to get into your car again and going back to your camper at some point. It's all about all their equipment is there, and my understanding is that some of those planes are a lot of money, a lot more than I fly. I fly a bigger one, and we can actually sit in, and so they sort of feel okay, this way they have keep a bit of an eye on their equipment, and so it's different. It's not the same as, okay, I'm going now. I'm leaving all my stuff there. I'm going to go somewhere. It's only 5 minutes down the road, I know, but I like to still spend another a couple hours, half an hour with my buddy next door, that, just talking about airplanes or whatever. So it takes away from the actual event, I think.
It does, but I think
away.
we've solved that problem this year. But it does, and just, I go to other events. I've been to Lakeland Airport where they camp. I was at Winnemac Airport where they camp at the airport. I was at First and Flight down in North Carolina. These are all in the US, but the camping is all happening at the airports. Now, I don't know if that's because they're just being loose about it, but it does happen at other airports where camping is happening at the airports.
Yeah, and we're kind of jumping around a bit, but that's okay, because we're brainstorming together, and that's what this is all about. Just, and so don't quite understand, and I heard a little comment here on the right-hand side, that CBO has no jurisdiction, because we know that it's federal regulated, but all of a sudden when we want to put a trailer there, or we want to camp overnight for an event, now all of a sudden everybody's involved. It's
complicated in my chair.
Yeah.
I have to share though that what had actually happened is we were having a lot of camping trailers there, and I noticed how many were there last year compared to the other years. It was just a couple watching the equipment, and I wasn't going to say anything. So it's growing. Yeah. And so what I actually invited the CBO to do was to help me lay it out, because they were too close together, and that's dangerous. And if one side goes on fire, they're all going. So that's how it started. And then he said, is it even permitted here? And then it turned into a zoning discussion with that. That is the way it went. It was actually me inviting them to help us to lay it out. Where could we have it? How could we actually accommodate it? And then it became, it's not actually even permitted. Yeah. So
I understand.
That's how it all kind of rolled out. And if we can work with them, but it just seemed to be a non-starter conversation.
Blair, how many jet pilots actually camp?
I think last year there was probably 20
at the camp.
Yeah.
Because there was a bunch of trailers come in there that just came to visit.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And that annoyed me more than anything. Yeah. But I don't know.
It is attracting spectators.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, quite a few.
Yeah.
We had over 200 cars last year.
Well, but I think, as Rod said, the ones that they're just visiting, but they didn't leave the trailers someplace else for the day.
These weren't even trailers, for instance. Well, great big
motor
homes, $180,000 in there. 3 of them parked in, and they stayed all weekend. Well, and they were just watching.
They're model airplane enthusiasts.
Yes, yeah. We'll go with that.
I have one more thing yet. With CBO about the hangars and the pole construction and the concrete 4-foot deep foundations. After 21 years, it seemed to be somehow be easier to pull a pole out of the ground than it is to remove a whole bunch of concrete. So maybe that wants to be reconsidered, or talk maybe with other CBOs and just about common sense and moving forward that way, because it really adds an enormous cost to the construction of something on a piece of land that you don't own, that after 21 years might not be renewed, and you have to clean it up. And I prefer to pull a pole out of the ground than, even if the tenant walks away and leaves you with that hangar that you don't want anymore because of different development, it's still easier to clean up a pole barn than it is to clean up a foundation. That's all I want to say about that.
Sharon?
As Councillor Knott mentioned, we did miss an item on the agenda. But I think we were on some good discussion about the role of the committee, and we're probably not going to go through every great idea that you have tonight. That's sort of where we envision the future of the committee going. So if I could perhaps put forward to council so we can put at least that issue to bed, a potential proposed motion for you to consider. That the Director of Recreation and Facilities and the CAO be instructed to prepare a report on the future status of the airport committee in accordance with the Township's committee appointment policy, including draft terms of reference to outline the committee's mandate, composition, roles and responsibilities, and reporting mechanism to Township Council for consideration of the committee's recommendations.
So you want that motion now?
If
I'll make that motion. Go, let's go ahead.
Trevor, second.
Trevor?
You need to discuss that. All in favor? That's carried then.
I believe,
Hard to sit here and not vote.
and
Raise your hand. We won't count it.
So your hand almost, yeah.
Okay, natural environment.
yes, so investigation in salvage harvest. Okay.
So I think everybody had hoped and dreamed that in 2016, the natural environment would be ready for another harvest. I think we had hoped that to have some capital funding to invest back into the airport. When we had it investigated by Dave Pullen, Huron County Forest Conservation Officer, he admittedly said it's not ready for that. He did make some recommendations that it is a potential to have a high value wood product in that natural environment, but it's just not ready at this time. But there was some things that he recommended we take as steps to prepare for that day. And so what he was really suggesting, and I'm just trying to find the wording here, was to actually do a salvage harvest. And maybe somebody who knows more about trees can explain what that is to everybody. But the idea being that there are some ash trees in there that are diseased and some defective trees, go in and take those, clean up some of the other less desirable ones to allow for the desirable trees to have grow opportunities. And so the next steps would be to retain an independent forester who's a member of the Ontario Professional Foresters Association and an Ontario certified tree marker to develop a long-term management plan and to mark the woodlot for an improvement in salvage harvest sometime in the near future, next year perhaps, and to apply the forest management plan and woodlot enhancement category of the Huron Clean Water Project, thank you, couldn't read through my sticky, to assist with the cost of using an independent forester. So my understanding is there's a Huron County funding program that would assist with that. And then using the assistance of the same independent forester, tender for the sale of wood products in the to a list of reputable logging companies to do the salvage harvest, and then continue to use that plan to proceed. And perhaps there's people here that can explain that better than I just did because it is a bit new to me. But I guess what I'm suggesting is that it's not in the budget at all in 2016 to take that step, but that we prepare and plan for that in 2017. We prepare the application to Huron County and get some funding for that in 2017. But Neil and Paul may have more information about what happens at this Huron County level with respect to the water project, clean water project.
Okay. Basically, I would be declaring a conflict of interest when it came before the review committee because I sit on that review committee. What David's talking about basically is take out a bunch of the firewood that is only firewood. That would have, I'll say, the less desirable trees gone. And as the ash are dying out, getting them out and letting other species fill in the space to harvest the sunshine is what a good forest does. And that it isn't really all that expensive to get a plan, and that itemizes species that you have, sizes, and that basically you can probably plan 50 to 60 years as to when you could have harvests, and that this salvage harvest would be just to get rid of the less desirable trees that are taking up space, and that it would upgrade, because the way a lot of forest companies did was they high graded a bunch of the bushes and the less desirable trees were left. This would be the reverse. We would be taking the salvage stuff out and letting the high quality stuff grow. Does that explain it anymore, Henry?
Yeah, just a question. I know the gas spore is causing in some places a lot of damage, but aren't we then better off to be proactive? And if there's any ash trees in there, I don't know, I'm not a forest, but I mean, cut them down now and harvest them and get some money for it versus letting them fall.
The professional forester would make an evaluation on that, and I think most ash trees over 5 inches would definitely be gone. Trevor?
Based on the fact that it's not harvestable this year, and my position, like based on what I'm hearing, is provide the proposal for the 2017 budget and move in that process. I think that's, to me, it's not something that is going to change between now and then.
Yeah.
It probably could change 3 times between now and then, until somebody actually looks at it and establishes whether it's, to me, the 2017 budget thing that goes into deliberations of that.
Is that what we should be doing?
So,
Right?
Contrary to that, I think we should be doing it sooner than later because of the ash problem, not wait another year.
Okay.
Because I just took a bush off myself.
One way that we could possibly do it would be to have the forester actually do a marking of what trees to take out, and that basically there would be revenue from that. It wouldn't be like a high quality wood cut, but there would be some revenue from that, and that would actually, with that money, it would way more than pay for the marking, and that there would be other monies left.
If somebody can provide me a report that tells me that, I would be curious to do that. But I don't have a report that tells me that.
Pat, I will try and help you with that, going through some of my contacts to get the information to you.
And just out of question then, in your opinion, because I know it doesn't seem like we're far into the summer, how quickly can we proceed, request the funding for the marker, get the funding, and move forward into that? I'm just wondering, is it a long process to request some assistance funding through this project?
It's the cost of the permit, consent to log.
Mm-hmm.
That is what it is. You go ahead, get your professional marker to mark the bush, and when you use that, you get the permit, that is rebated back to you, that cost of
Oh.
of the permit itself. It's about $100,
$100.
That's all it's being referred to there.
Okay, it's not the cost of the marker to come in, the professional
Well,
marker to come
but
in?
further on, Neil, you'll have information in regards to clean water, that they will fund the actual plan, will they not? Portion of?
I forget the parameters. For most of the bushes that are being done, the clean water will cover 50% of the actual prescription as to the best way of managing it into the future. And Trevor?
So my thinking is if it's currently not budgeted. So if it's a cost, if the net is a cost to the municipality, my recommendation is 17. If there's a report that tells me after all is said and done, the net's gonna be increase in revenue, show me a report of that, and then potentially I could be swayed to do it in 60. But the fact is that I don't have anything to say that.
Okay. That I'm just going to answer that I will ask tomorrow morning, that because I think we have somewhere around 70 asks coming before the committee tomorrow morning. And the committee meets roughly every 2.5 to 3 months, so that basically it would be in the next round, and that would be within 3 months that we would have as to what was what. I'll talk to the people tomorrow morning that Doug Hawking is the one that would be taking the application, and talk to him and David Pullen tomorrow as to how we could work it and how costs might be and when they would be.
I'm going to respectfully request that we move this to 2017. We have 2 potential hangars being built right now, which is driving a lot of my time at the airport. And I'm hearing things tonight that the committee and the terms of reference seems to be a greater priority than this. And I just know my current project schedule laid out for the rest of the summer is heavy. And I want to do it right. And I want to make sure that we can put the right resources to the natural environment. And if it could wait till 2017, I would appreciate that. But that's council's, at their leisure, your request, it's
I haven't been through that bush as to how many ash trees are without leaves now. That some of them may be garbage by next year, but that is something. And I know that a lot of the firewood guys are getting all the ash that they can handle, so that probably no things.
If you have the right person come in there, they will probably look at some of the other trees that could possibly come out too. Not just the ash. It depends on what you're going for. But there is fellows out there who are, they're not tree huggers, but they're persons who, they call them they look after a healthy bush. And there is trees that probably need to come out.
What we're talking about in this prescription for the forest, and the guy that does the marking could come back in and do the prescription. It could be all part of the same project if we wanted it. Personally, I haven't got back to getting the prescription, but I use a guy that is qualified to write the prescriptions to do my marking. Brock, and then Yolanda.
I want to go back to an earlier issue, and I don't know the land very well out there, but I'm asking if there's not an area out there where arrangement could be made for some camping close by and outside of the perimeter of the airport, but for camping purposes.
What about your land with school down?
I'm sorry?
What about the land where they throw the school down?
It's there.
Well, we don't have anything to say about that.
It's more term, very.
You can use it as far as I'm concerned. Paul might change.
I'm just saying, if you want
I can
something
just
near the
provide an answer
property.
for that. When this event goes on, the crops are in, so there's no way to really go to the back property.
Talking about future, Eric?
Okay, sorry, I thought you meant for camping, you mean camping all the time, not just for this event?
On occasions, on these
Okay.
occasions.
There's no road access back there.
It's all crop.
There's no reasonable access at this time.
But that can be looked at.
Yeah. that's-
What's the property across the road?
Jim? Yolanda was next.
Sorry. I just wanted to say that I support Pat in leaving this till 2017, the natural environment thing. Like, let's just move on, to be honest.
Okay. The staff will bring that recommendation back at a later council meeting.
2017 budget
There's a
consideration.
bigger fish to fry right now.
So
Yeah.
if, is someone moving that, that the Director of Recreation and Facilities be directed to bring forward a proposal in the 2017 budget for?
Yep.
So,
Trevor and Yolanda? All in favor? Carried.
so I think that has most of the issues other than this. Is there any other business that you wish to discuss?
On?
I'm just thinking in my own mind here, as Pat says, she has her plate full. And I think one of your motions requested that she pursue reorganization of the committee or terms of reference for us, the airport committee. She does have the hangars to do, and all the other recreation things in town. Possibly you're working on your budget for your woodlot and that. The committee has been like this for 17 years, 19 years that I've been on it. I don't think it would hurt if any reassessment of that committee were to wait until the fall, winter. When there's no hockey, it's just not time.
Well, I really go to the hockey. It's more, and just for those who aren't aware, we have a $3.3 million renovation project that's breaking ground September 18th. Tenders are opening next week for the Memorial Hall, which is under my department as well. This building is being renovated into theater, and so all those tenders are going out now. So there's just a lot going on this summer, but I would appreciate Dawn's consideration on that, and I think that a lot of these guys spend their summer flying, and we can ramp up the meetings starting in.
It's not as if we're meeting every month either, so.
Well, we need to make sure that we are if we need to. Yeah.
But I think we should try and have at least a general terms of reference for possibly our September meeting, and that would give the committee an understanding of exactly where we fit, and that the committee can always bring forward recommendations to council on how to proceed with things at the airport, and that maybe that would, knowing that we can do that as a committee, would probably help out. Trevor?
But in that sense, if it's coming sometime, I would like the committee to have some input on what they believe is their responsibilities and what should be included in that terms of reference. To me, it should be a two-way street. Like, we can't, I don't want Sharon and Pat developing in terms of reference with the committee who has been a committee for 17 years or 19 years. They should have some input on what their roles and responsibilities, what roles do they want to have. So I think I'm okay with September too. I just
Sure.
don't want to make it out that it's only a one-sided conversation.
So when we've been developing the terms of reference for any of the committees that we've been working with, we prepare a draft and then we go to the committee for discussion and get their input. And it really is a collaboration before that draft document comes back to council for consideration.
That was what I was meaning, have at least a draft for the September committee meeting.
It's a skeleton more than a draft. It's
Yeah.
the things that, the blanks that need to be filled in.
Paul?
Just if this is other businesses, a little different topic, but just from my knowledge, what shape is the runway surface
Excellent.
out there? The operational condition is in good shape.
We had a runway study done as part of a KGO, our Ontario-wide survey done by MTO. And it came back as good and excellent in all its ratings.
I'm on it every day and there's hardly a bump.
Yeah, and there's very little cracking or anything like that. It is an excellent condition.
That's great to hear that, because Goderich needs a substantial upgrade, and it's over $1 million.
I got a call from Hanover manager yesterday too, they need to do that too.
So that's very good to hear that. I find it a bit disconcerting. MTO, Ministry of Transportation in Ontario here, in their mandate, they'll spend millions and maybe even billions of dollars on hard surface on, those provincial roads. But trying to ask them to do something for, surfacing on our airports, well, if it's a municipal airport, that's not our jurisdiction. We're not touching out a 10-foot pole. But what for a kilometer of asphalt here on a runway, or a kilometer out in all the kilometers they do on the roadways, what would have more of an effect in the area? So it makes you scratch your head sometimes, and they won't go there, but it would have a bigger effect there, and it would only be a drop in the bucket to what monies are spent. So I find that a little odd.
We would just like to get a can of white paint from them so we can paint the center line again.
They're not that bad.
But it's still. What the involvement of the county, what is, I believe will be looked at there. What role do the municipal airports play in the local communities? What effect do they have on the local economy and the economy in Huron County? I think that's the question that needs to be answered. And if there's a positive effect, what is it to quantify that? And from that, what role, if any, should the county have in moving ahead with these municipal airports? So, that's how I see this evolving. What I don't believe will be addressed in any way, or it's not our business, is site-specific issues such as you're talking about hangar location and site design and planning. That should be done here. I think it's that overarching, financial and economic view of what effect they have on us in our local communities. So,
how many airports are there?
well, there's 3, but there's just 2 of them municipal, 3 within the county, 2 of them are municipally owned. That's Goderich and Wingham. The one at Huron Park is privately owned. So it's really the 2 that we're discussing here.
Pat?
I was just gonna mention that I could forward a report to the warden, which was done. It was done a few years ago, but it did really have some insight into economic impact of airports, which we had done. And I'd be happy to provide that so that your new economic development officer can have some relative understanding of the impact airports have on a region, not just on the local area.
That would be great, because I know the feasibility report, you did that in-house, did you not? There was several comments that, you did a very good job of that. Just, with the resources that you have and whatnot, you did a good job of really looking at options. And, I would certainly get what you're suggesting in front of the Echo board too.
If there's no other business, we'll go to the confirmatory bylaw. bylaw number 64, 2016, being a bylaw to confirm general previous actions of the council of the Township of North Huron to be introduced, read a first and second time. Trevor and Brock, all in favor? To be read a third time, passed and signed by the Reeve clerk. Brock and Ray, all in favor?
Just sit on your hands.
I'll vote with them to adjourn.
Okay, adjourned. Bill and Trevor, all in favor? Gary, we're done.